All right, guys. So what we're going to do right now, uh, is write our paragraph. You must write your first paragraph with me in order to get credit for class today. You will get 0 points of credit if you do not write this paragraph with me and then share it with me in the chat. Now you might be wondering, how are we going to write the paragraph when we're all writing different things? That's why I'm emphasizing I'm going to help you write your paragraph. I am not going to write it for you. That means every single one of you needs to find out right now who your author is. Remember, that's on Canvas. I'm going to go ahead and show you one more time on Canvas how to find it. Hopefully at this point, you should already know this because you've been working on your presentation for a while and you're already good. But if you haven't, you can click on Canvas. You can go ahead and get to Authors You Should Know presentation. And you can go ahead and click on this third paragraph where it says you can see the author you've been assigned by clicking here. Once you've done that, this right here is the list of authors. So Ariana is going to present on Wu Cheng'en. This is the list of authors. Whoever your author is going to be next to your name. You must write this paragraph in order to get credit for class day. Even if you're like, I'm not going to do the presentation, I'm going to get a 0 on it. Well, one, that's not a good move. But two, you still have to write the paragraph in order to get credit for class. You might be like, I'm not going to write my essay this week. Cool, still need to write this paragraph in order to get credit for class. You will get a 0 for class today unless you write this paragraph with me. So please make sure you are ready to write this paragraph. You know who your author is. All right, I'm going to go ahead then and start sharing my screen where you can see everything on it, including the best friend. You guys can see the best friend now. We're going to be writing the introduction paragraph. Now, the other day, we kind of mapped out what our body paragraphs are going to look like. If you don't remember, we used this here to kind of map out what our body paragraphs are going to look like. The first body paragraph would be like personal life. The second one would be like important writings. And the third one would be about like impact, their historical impact and their modern impact. Those are the body paragraphs. Conclusion paragraphs pretty easy. You just recap one sentence from each of the body paragraphs and the introduction. The part that might be a little confusing to some of you guys is the introduction. Because you might be like, well, how is the introduction different than the personal life? Well, if we look closely at the introduction, that will help us out. We're also going to do it here in class today. And I want to remind you guys that what you need to do today is write stuff in your own words. If you copy and paste stuff off the internet without putting it in quotes, and this is true today in class and at home when you're writing on your essay, you will get 0 points. I had 2 people in this period last week, 2 people in this period, not last week, 2 weeks ago because it was spring break, try to turn in an essay that they had copy and pasted words on the internet from. Can you guys go ahead and guess what their grade for the entire week was? What was their grade for the entire week after they tried to cheat like that? Yep, it was a 0 for the entire week. What do you think their grade was for the quarter after I put in that 0? Yep, it was an F. It was an F. So both of those students are now failing my class. Now, I don't want that to happen to anyone else. I know I've said this so many times. Everything must be your own words. So when I am going to show you this right now, that's awesome. Make sure that you are doing your stuff in your own words. Now, if you already did this and turned it in earlier, I love that. I still want you guys to write this paragraph with me because I think we'll talk about some valuable writing tips here that will help you out. All right, we're going to start with our introduction. Remember, this is going to be at least 5 sentences long, And it's going to start with our hook. Our hook is going to be 1 to 2 sentences. And we are writing here about a real life author, So can you guys tell me in the chat, are we looking at a nonfiction essay or are we looking more at a literary analysis essay? Which kind of essay are we looking at for this particular assignment? Is it nonfiction or literary analysis? Now I see a little bit of split in the chat. Some people say nonfiction, some people saying literary analysis, and I can see why it's a little confusing. Nonfiction means it actually happened. So about a real person. Literary analysis means you're analyzing a book. It is going to be nonfiction. These are real authors. They wrote literature, but guys, are we analyzing their literature? No, we are not looking at their books in any sort of detail. We aren't looking at the quotes from their books in any sort of detail. Remember, the author is actually going to, or the essay is going to be actually about the author, not about the things that they wrote. going to be more about the author, not necessarily as much about the things that they wrote. There will be one paragraph about their books, but we aren't like digging into those in any sort of deep way. So this is a nonfiction article, a nonfiction essay. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to start with either a fact or quotation, fact or quotation. And I think for an author, it's really easy to do a quote. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and Google whoever the author is. I'm going to do Wu Chang'an because that was the one that literally we just had. Wu Chang'an, I'm going to Google quotes. I want you to go ahead and Google quotes for your author. I want you to go ahead and Google quotes for your author. Now, you might be in a spot where you're like, Mr. Tilton, you told us not to cite these sources and get quotes from the author. The other day, you just told us this. And I know, and that's true for literally every other part except for the hook. For this first sentence, we are literally just going to take a quote from our author, a quote from our author that is kind of like a powerful or interesting quote. And I'm going to go ahead and look for one for mine. And I want you to find one for yours. And I like this one. I was very fond of strange stories when I was a child. I like this one because it kind of brings in a little bit of his love for literature, but really you can find any quote that you like from your author, any quote that you like from your author. And it's weird, I just made this whole big deal the other day about like, well, we're doing quotes about the author, not by the author. Yes, all that is true except for the hook. I just made a big deal about like, don't copy and paste stuff from the internet, make it your own words. Except for this, we're literally going to copy and paste a quote. The stuff you write should be in your own words, but this is going to be a direct copy and paste a quote with quotation marks around it, and we'll even say who said it. Now, we do not need to say which website we got it from, because this is a quote directly from the author. We're just going to do that. We won't have to cite this source or anything like that. So azquotes.com is not a very academic or reliable source. We talked about how to find those the other day. All we're doing at this point is just finding a quote from the author to start our story or to start our essay. I'm going to go ahead and Control-C, copy that. I'm going to go ahead and open up a blank Google Doc. And I know that I haven't formatted or anything yet. Can you guys tell me in the chat, whose job is it to format? Whose job is it to format? It's your job. Yep, we've done it a bunch of times before. You should be good at how to do it. Times New Roman size 12 double space, the cover page, the abstract, all of that stuff there. At this point, I'm not going to worry about any of that. I'm just going to show you how to write the paragraph, but you will need to format on your own. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to Control-Shift-V. And there's my quote. I'm going to start off my essay with this quote. I was very fond of strange stories when I was a child. I end it with a period. I end it with a quotation mark. Guys, that's literally my first sentence. That's literally my first sentence. I was very fond of strange stories when I was a child. Now I've got my first sentence. I've got a period there. Some of you guys, you want to end your quote with a comma and keep going to explain who said it. If you were going to say something like says whoever and say the author's name, you could do it that way. But I actually want you to do a period. I want to show you how it's going to work this time. So do a period, do a quotation mark. We're done with our hook, literally one sentence long. Now we're going to do our background, starting with the question of who said that quote? Who said that quote? So we just did our quote. We're going to go ahead and say this quote from the, and this is where you're going to try to describe your author a little bit. In this case, I'm going to say from the ancient Chinese author. Now, your author is probably not ancient Chinese. There are literally like 2 ancient Chinese authors on there. So yours is probably not an ancient Chinese author. Maybe yours is a British author. Maybe yours is a modern author. Maybe yours is a science fiction author. But you want to try to give a little description about the author. This quote from the ancient Chinese author, and this time I'm saying Wu Chang'an. Now I want to be super, super clear, guys. I know I was telling you this earlier. You are not writing this paragraph. I know some of you guys, you're like, I'm just typing up exactly what Tilton's saying, and you're going to send it to me in the chat. And I'm going to be like, nope, I'm giving you 0 points for today. Because you guys should not be writing about Wu Chang'an unless your name is Ariana Morales, whoever your author is. So this is not your quote. This is not your author. These are not your words. But I'm just showing you how it works. You do something like this quote from, and then describe your author, and then put your author's name, remembering to capitalize. This quote from the ancient Chinese author Wu Chang'an. And then you can go ahead and use one of these words, something like shows or describes or tells. And then I'm going to give you a minute to do it, go ahead and do it, to finish the sentence talking about what that quote shows or what that quote tells or whatever. For me here, I'm going to go ahead and finish this sentence. I'm not even going to talk it out loud, say it out loud because I want you guys to in your own. But whatever your quote is, go ahead and write in your own words what that quote is showing here. So this quote from the ancient Chinese author Wu Chang'an shows, and then go ahead and finish your sentence talking about your particular quote and what that particular quote shows. Give you about 30 more seconds to finish that sentence. So we started with a quote. We then had a sentence that explained that quote while also saying who the author is and giving a short little description of them. That's awesome. Now we're going to go ahead and move. We remember our background. We're doing at least 3 sentences. We already did a who. We also did a little bit of a where by bringing in the Chinese author or British author or whatever. Maybe even a little bit of a what, like what is the author? I do want to make sure we focus on the why in one of our sentences, but I also want to focus on a little more on the what, specifically what are they most famous for writing? What are they most famous for writing? So I'm going to go ahead and I know the answer for Wu Chang'an, but you might need to look it up for your author. And if you don't know it off the top of your head, it might already be in your presentation. But you're going to say he, if it's a he, maybe it's a she, maybe it's a they, like whoever your author is, use the correct pronoun. He is the author of multiple novels, comma, including, and then this is where I'm going to put the name of 1 or 2 of their most famous novels. Now, maybe your person was a poet, so maybe you say of multiple poems or of many poems. Maybe your person only wrote 1 story, and you can say he is the author of whatever. But for most of us, it's going to be he is the author of multiple novels, comma, including, and then you're going to go ahead and in italics with the correct capitalization, write the name of 1 of their most popular novels. Maybe you do even do 2 of their most popular novels. You can do including Journey to the West, and you can do another one too. And then I'm going to move on in just a second. So 30 seconds, make sure you finish that. He is the author of, multiple novels, including Journey to the West. Make sure it, fits for whatever author you're writing about. Remember, to get credit for class today, you are going to have to share this with me in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and press space after my period, and I'm going to go ahead and move on. And I'm going to say something like this. This book, so the book that we just talked about, or if you did multiple books, you can say these books, whatever, right? Whichever one you're doing. If you did 1, this book. If you did 2, these books. This book, first published, and this is where we're going to go ahead and find out when was our book published. So we're trying to give good information, right? This is some good information about when. Journey to the West. I'm looking for Journey to the West first published. You find your book. When was it first published? Journey to the West was first published in 1592. Now, if you don't have an exact number, you might say first published over, and then you can say like however many hundreds or years ago, or maybe your author's more recent, and you're like first published, just 2 decades ago. Like, decades is 10 years, centuries is hundreds of years, whatever. Find when it was published. This book first published in 1592. Notice how I put a comma on either side of my little, it's called a parenthetical. This book, and then I'm giving some extra information about the book, first published in 1592. So I'm going to give a comma before that information and after that information. This book, first published in 1592. And I'm going to use a phrase that you guys can use too. Helped cement. Cement means like really solidify, right? Like in the same way that you think of cement, like what you walk on. Help cement. Then I'm going to use the author's last name, whatever the author's last name is. Cheng En's with an apostrophe S at the end. Helped cement Cheng En's status. And literally, you can be using a lot of these same words, just obviously switching it out for whatever here says. Helped cement Cheng En's status as one of the most influential. And this is where you maybe give a description of the author again. Most influential, you maybe could do female authors if your author's a female, one of the most influential science fiction authors, one of the most influential American, one of the most influential British, one of the most influential Black, like whatever your word description is. In this case, I'm going to go here. One of the most influential Chinese authors of all time. This book, first published in 1592, helped cement Cheng En's status as one of the most influential Chinese authors of all time. Again, I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap yours up. It can look like mine. So guys, we did who, we did what they wrote, and we did why that's important. We literally did all of our background. We did the 3+ sentences already, which means we're now ready to move on to our main point. The remainder of this paper will argue that, demonstrate, or show that. We do not want to do argue because we're not arguing. We're literally just like giving an overview of their life. We would do more something like demonstrate or show. And I actually don't like the demonstrate or show that phrasing. We'll actually do something a little different. The remainder of this paper will, and I don't even know if I like demonstrate or show. I might do something like this. Remember, the best friend is there to help you, but sometimes you'll have to forge your own path using some of the same ideas. The remainder of this paper will give an overview of, and then you're going to put the author's name, Wu Cheng En's life and work. So whoever your author is, the remainder of this paper will give an overview of their name, correctly capitalized, with an apostrophe S at the end, life and work. And guys, that's your hook. You brought in the audience, you introduced who your author is, you gave a little bit of information about them, but you're going to dig much more deeply into it by the time you are done with this essay, when you do all of the body paragraphs, the conclusion, the abstract, stuff like that. Now, as a reminder, this is due by 10 o'clock today, along with the Edpuzzle. But right now, if you are done with this first introduction paragraph, in order for you to get credit for class today, remember, yours should not be about Wu Cheng En unless you are Ariana Morales. It should be about your own author. But I need you guys to go ahead and post it in the chat as a private message only to me, and I will check that out. You guys can go ahead and do that now.